Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye olahari samya sampatoshe.
Namo sadanto suchedoye olahari samya sampatoshe.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Honorable Master, Dharma friends, welcome. Today is Sunday, November 13th here in the Gold Coast of Queensland, Saturday the 12th back in California. Welcome to our Avatamsaka Sutra lecture. My name is Hunter. We're going to be looking into the chapter 20 of our sutra, and let's invoke spiritual presence. Here we go. Last time. And we would like to acknowledge the Komeri people of the Ugambe language region who practice their spiritual connections to land and to all creation in this location for thousands of years. Today, we acknowledge them as traditional custodians of the lands on which we live, learn, work, and where all activities take place. We recognize all First Nations peoples as the original storytellers of these lands and acknowledge the vital role they continue to play in our community. We offer our respect to elders, past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations peoples whose sovereignty was never ceded. We do indeed. Okay. So, gee whiz, there's some news coming from here, which is that I'm about to set off on a journey, and Next week's lecture and the week following will be delivered by the monks from the Berkeley Monastery. So Jin Chuan and Jin Wei Shi have kindly agreed to continue to turn the Dharma wheel, and so that'll be the next 2 weeks. I'll be back in California the end of November, and the lecture series will pick up again from there. So today we've got our varsity team of translators and IT friends and facilitators and sysops who are putting this lecture on, including people in California as well. So I say our heavy hitters in technology put their best efforts into bringing this lecture to all of you, and I'm delighted, grateful for their efforts. We also have translation happening in Chinese and a translation happening in Vietnamese. We're working on Spanish. That would be good. Certainly in California. So, all right. What do we have today? We've got a new bodhisattva whose name is Forest of Practices. Heng Lin Pusa, his name is. And he's as I think, I don't know if I haven't traced this, but I believe as you go into the 10 bodhisattvas, with each successive bodhisattva, the Dharma gets deeper, somehow more profound. And Heng Lin Pusa, when he's done, what is he going to take aim at today? He takes aim at karma. He's talking about karma, which is, it's one of those topics that is, it has to be among the most essential, fundamental questions that people want to know about. Why is my life such a mess, we ask, or how come good things happen to bad people, things like that. And the answer is, karma. People, that particular word has already been owned by popular culture, but incorrectly, sadly. So the actual meaning of karma is neutral. It's neither good nor bad. It's just action and its results. The good or the bad determines by how you view what happens. So karma, in our Bodhisattva's version of it, disappears. And he tags onto it. He says, living beings, everybody you've ever met, everybody you've ever been related to in every lifetime, all those living beings come from karma. You know what? Karma doesn't exist. He explodes it. So it's like, yeah, this is profound. So we're in for, you remember Jules Verne's novel, 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea? Great Jules Verne fantasy novel from my childhood, and that's one of those. We're on a submarine ride to the depths of the planet and the machines that run the universe, right? The engines that actually bring worlds into being. That's going to be in the spotlight today. So, not a small thing, and, it'd be great if I could just dance it or whistle it, but nope, we got to strap on our seatbelts and go deep into the workings of karma today. We got some of the best guides available for that, including we're going to be looking at a commentary by a Tang Dynasty monk, a monk who lived in the 10th century, 9th century, who was considered to be the chief bodhisattva of the Avatamsaka school in China. They called him Huayan Pusa, the Avatamsaka bodhisattva. And his name was Master Chengguan, but the emperor, he had 9 emperors take refuge with him in the process of his 102-year lifespan. They had lined up, and of course emperors came and went, some shorter than others, their reigns, but they all bowed to him as Shifu. They all called him Shifu. And so he was a remarkable man. And we have a double commentary that he left on the whole sutra. He made one commentary. His writing brush, Maobi, must have never stopped. And after he gave it to his disciples, said, here's my view of the Avatamsaka Sutra, they all said, Shifu, sorry, we don't get it. It's too deep. Can you try again? He went, oy vey is mir, he said. And he did a second commentary, a sub-commentary to the first commentary. So, luckily, in the 1930s, some enterprising Buddhists took the sutra, the first commentary, and the second commentary and put it all in one book. So it's called the Avatamsaka exegesis, the Su Chao it's called. And the Su is the first commentary and the Chao is the sub-commentary. So we've got, I found Master Chengguan's commentary and sub-commentary to today's section. So we're going to look at that. Couldn't have better advice on the Avatamsaka than Master Chengguan's commentary. Now, one of the issues is he writes in elegant Tang Dynasty Chinese. So what would it be like in English? It's kind of like Beowulf. Okay, have you ever read Beowulf? It's medieval English. And you have to, you have to say it, you have to hear it, then let's see, and you consult a dictionary, and you get through Beowulf, and you discover, wow, this is how people talked, 600, 700 years ago, and still speaking English. Well, Tang Dynasty Chinese is the same way. You need to kind of listen to it, and get some help with the characters you don't recognize, and then it's very much like a puzzle. Did people tell you that during the pandemic, puzzles were a big deal? There are a few companies who make jigsaw puzzles, and they were sold out during the pandemic because people on lockdown just cleared away their table and just opened the box and flipped it over, and all the pieces went boom. And then they spent happy hours and days rebuilding their puzzle. And that experience of putting together a puzzle on your tabletop is sometimes one piece it's all clear, and there's that one. When you read the Tang Dynasty Chinese, it suddenly comes into focus, and you read it, and you pause and maybe diagram it and look for there's parallels in the sentence above it or below it, and then boom, there it is. That's the experience of reading this ancient wisdom text. And he's explaining the Avatamsaka Sutra, which is a double reward. So as you read the commentary, he's shining light on these passages that otherwise you wouldn't have seen what it was talking about. All right, with that as the preamble, we ready? Going to take a look? Here we go. Here's our sutra. Here we go. Okay, ready? 尔时恒令菩萨成佛为力，普观十方而说颂言。Then, Bodhisattva Forest of Practices received the Buddha's awe-inspiring strength, contemplated everywhere in all directions, and chanted the following verses in praise. Okay. Now, oops, you know what? I hadn't shared my screen. By golly. You'd think I'd learn. Do it again. Here it is. Ready? One more time. 尔时恒令菩萨成佛为力，普观十方而说颂言。Then Bodhisattva Forest of Practices received the Buddha's awe-inspiring strength, contemplated everywhere in all directions, and chanted the following verses in praise. Okay. So this is so many of our sections begin. We're in a palace in a heaven called the Suyama heaven, the heaven of well-divided time, where it's above the sun and moon, so the illumination comes from the bodies of the devas who live there. And the Buddha is sitting with his legs crossed, perfectly ready and willing to tell you more about the Avatamsaka world. And yet it's not quite his time, because in the pageantry of a sutra lecture, the bodhisattvas who have arrived, and we see 10 of them, they name 10 of them, but there's many more, they have to praise the Buddha first. Not that, is it that the Buddha likes being praised? I don't think so. It's not that. He doesn't need flattery. It's that in the process of, so what happens physically is each bodhisattva in turn comes out, lights incense, just the way our Dharma request just now, walks around, sets the incense down, bows, kneels, and says, will the Sangha with great virtue, in this case it's will the Buddha with great virtue out of compassion. They ask the Buddha to speak. And in the process, there's room for them to express what's on their mind. And by every account, what people say is when you're face to face with the Buddha, literally, physically, face to face with the Buddha, all of your worries are gone. There's just this feeling of every single cell in your body, from the blood circulating to the brain cells flashing to the skin pores, feels good. You feel better than you've ever felt. There's no aches and pains. There's no worries about, did I remember to turn the oven off after I took the bread out? All of that stuff. You're where you belong. You feel at home, at ease. And often, they say, people are moved at that point to give voice to how they feel. So it's more than just a ritual. They really do want to praise the Buddha. And as we've said pretty much every week, the surprising things they say lead me to think that this is genuine. It's not just rote, and they're not singing along with Mitch. It's not just kind of empty praise. The bodhisattvas, one by one, talk about some aspect of the Buddha's wisdom or compassion that moves them. So, what we just said was, for us to practice as bodhisattva, receive the Buddha's awesome, awe-inspiring strength. Now, what is that? That's a key to it, which we haven't really talked about much. And it's that the Buddha prepares each bodhisattva to say things and to see things that probably they couldn't have said or seen without the Buddha's aid. There's something, what do we say? We say puts the whammy on them, deputizes them, but what is the Buddha's Wei Shen Li Liang, that this awe-inspiring, they say, spirit, that the Buddha blesses them with some sort of energy that allows them to go beyond their limits and to say things that maybe were subtly in the mind, but they couldn't voice, but now they can. So this is what happens first. And the bodhisattvas then, it says, contemplate all directions. They look around. Why? Who's here? Who are they going to, who are they talking to? Who can hear what they have to say? So it's very, very organic process. This is not when I remember the best parts of Methodist church on Sunday morning were the hymns by far. The sermons were okay, but the hymns were the deal. And even so, one would come up and be, oh, that's a favorite. And my mother would always sing harmony. She automatically went for the harmony. She never sang the melody, interestingly. That's where she felt comfortable. And I guess it was, my mother had a musical ear, and, like, praise God from whom all blessings flow. She would go, praise God from whom all blessings flow. She would fit her notes around the melody. And it was familiar and comforting because it was kind of a spiritual refuge. My mother was profoundly a faithful Methodist churchwoman, and it gave her refuge, it gave her strength, it gave her courage and faith to have these good old hymns ready to sing, and so nostalgia, sentiment, familiarity, custom, all the things that kind of reinforce you in the family, in the community of the church, that's not what's happening here. That's not it. The bodhisattvas are out there exploring, because they're not Buddhas yet. These bodhisattvas are like doctors. They've got clients, they have patients back home. When this lecture that the Buddha is giving to them is over, they're going to travel. They're going to go back to the worlds they came from and teach and heal and rescue and serve communities that are waiting for them. So that's what bodhisattvas do on their way to becoming Buddhas. So the Buddha, when he blesses them, he's giving them strength to do something that they could not have done without that anointment, without that investiture of good energy. So they look around and they think, yeah, okay, I know who this is. I know what to say to make people happy. Okay, so that's what just happens. There's a real interchange here, and it's magical for sure. Some people might, if you want to give it a negative spin, they would say, oh, the Buddha is hypnotizing them. Oh, the Buddha is brainwashing them. We don't know what leaves the Buddha and comes to the bodhisattva, but he bestows upon them some good energy, and it allows them to lecture to praise, to sing, to express their hearts at another level. Right? People who sat in the audience at Master Shren Hua's Dharma talks absolutely would relate to this part of the Dharma process, the Dharma speaking process, because 7:30 at night, we had just finished an hour of chanting from 6:30 to 7:30 at Gold Mountain Monastery. Freezing cold in this brick building in San Francisco, which would get down to 40 degrees in the evening, damp. And we'd stopped eating at noon. We hadn't eaten, since noon. And yet, when it came time for Shifu to put his palms together and we'd request Dharma and he would open the sutra, there was this feeling of light. And you weren't hungry, your stomach was not complaining, your mind felt clear and alert, even though you may have been nodding in meditation, but there was like, yes, this is the time. And Master Hua was speaking Mandarin, and how many people in the audience understood Chinese? A few, Most everybody was waiting for the translation, and yet there was this strange sensation that you understood what he was saying. And translators, myself being one of the many, would be sitting down below. Here's Master Hua explaining the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Buddha's words, in Chinese, and your Chinese ability was very limited, and yet somehow you could translate it for the audience. There was a whole bunch of magic going on, and at the end of the lecture you felt full, as if you'd had a meal of Dharma, your Fa Shen Hui Ming, your Dharma body and wisdom life, whatever that magical emanation from that comes out of, when you cultivate the way, that you felt full and fat and happy. So, yeah, I can relate to the Buddha's sending out his awesome spiritual energy, and then for us to practice his bodhisattva receives it and is now ready to speak Dharma, to praise. Here he goes. 譬如十方界一切诸地中，自性无所有，无处不周遍. It's like the element of earth, found in worlds in all directions. Its nature doesn't exist, yet here it is, pervading everywhere. Yeah. What's it like? Well, here's what he wants to talk about. Like the earth. Think topsoil. Think tilth, right? Amendments. Potassium, phosphorus. It's like the element of earth found in worlds, that's plural, not the world, but worlds. So there's earth with us, there's earth on Mars, and all of the different stars, solar systems around the galaxy. Guess what? It has no nature. And yet, are you telling me it doesn't exist? It exists. All right? That's his first opening statement. And it's unsettling because is he throwing us a curveball? Like, just like the earth. You know the earth. Yeah. It doesn't have any nature, but it's everywhere. So natureless earth, what? Okay, so hold that thought, as they say. Don't go away. Ready? 佛身亦如是，普遍诸世界，种种诸思想，无住无来处. The bodies of the Buddha are the same. They pervade throughout all worlds, appearing in every shape and form, yet without an abode and without a source. Look at the Chinese. Let's go back to verse 1. Here we go. Piru, just like. 10, that's the character for 10. 10 directions, worlds. It's just like worlds in the 10 directions. Yi, one. Qie, all. Zhu, all. Di, earth. Zhong, element. Just like the earth element in worlds in all 10 directions. Zi, self. Xing, nature. Svabhava, the inherentness, the amness, the isness of that earth. Wu, without. So, yo, without existence, doesn't exist. The self-nature, the distinct thing about that makes that earth different from everything else, doesn't exist. However, wu, same as this one, without, no place, wu chu, no place, bu, not everywhere pervade. There's nowhere you don't find it. It's everywhere. It has no nature, and yet it's everywhere. Okay, as I say, hold that thought. That's the first opening statement. It's going to be balanced by what follows. Ready? For Buddha, Shen, body, that's the word for Buddha, for Buddha's body also like that, like the earth, nature of earth. 普遍诸世界, everywhere pervading through all worlds. Zhong zhong, many, many varieties of si, form, xiang, and appearance. Look at the two wus here. Wu zhu, nowhere it abides, wu lai chu, nowhere it comes from. So what's the point? He's telling us about Buddhas. That's his point. You know what Buddhas are like? They're like the nature of earth. They don't exist. And yet they're everywhere. And not only are they everywhere, they're in every shape and form, but they don't live anywhere, and they didn't come from anywhere else. Like, oh, That's helpful, I guess, as a statement about the Buddha. Like I said, we're going deep today. This is profound stuff. So what are the Buddhas like? Okay. Let's think about this. What for us to practice as Bodhisattva is telling us is he's saying that if you want to understand the Buddha, here's what to look for, and here's where you won't find it. You won't find the Buddha. Everybody ready? Can you all see? Who's that behind me? That's Vairochana Buddha. And if I were to, let's see, I don't want to lose my connection. If I lift it up higher, can you see right over my head? There's another Buddha down below. That's Amitabha, surrounded by Guan Yin and great strength, Mahastama Prapta. To this side is Manjushri. To that side is Samantabhadra. And the Buddha in the middle is Vairochana. He's the Buddha who takes as his task explaining the Avatamsaka Sutra. So, okay, so that Buddha, two bodhisattvas, if you look at that image, you think, yeah, that's the Buddha. I recognize that. That's the Buddha. So what about that one standing up? Well, that's the Buddha too. One is sitting, one is standing. Vairochana's mudra, he's like this. Amitabha's mudra is like this. And so those are subtle differences. But that's not what the Bodhisattva is saying. He's saying, if you want to see the Buddha, you never will, but don't assume that he doesn't exist. He's here on all sides. He's like space. And somebody showing up with a kind heart, that's the Buddha appearing in someone's nature. I was reading a Twitter feed, and somebody was on an airplane and said an elderly woman with mobility issues had fallen in the aisle between the seats as she was getting on the airplane, and he saw the flight attendants treated her with tremendous gentleness and patience and skill, and everybody in the seats on all sides were just so moved at how well the flight attendants dealt with the problem, because this woman couldn't get back up, and there was just everything was stopped, and everything was okay, no rush, no temper, no irritation, until she was on her feet, and the emergency was handled. And the person sending the tweet out said, boy, this is, it reaffirms my faith in humanity to see how kind people can be when at a time like this. And then, interestingly, I literally saw another tweet today, and this person was also on an airplane, and he commented that the pilot, as he was leaving the gate, saw people rushing to get on the plane, and it had closed, and they were about to depart, and he stopped and pulled back and allowed them to get on, and the passengers were upset and abusive and mean, and the pilot had them arrested. He called the airport authorities and they took them away. So, it's like compassion is not always sweet. Sometimes compassion can be very stiff. But where's the Buddha? Sometimes the Buddha teaches you with a splash of cold water, and because it's exactly what you need to move closer to your own Buddha nature. Sometimes the Buddha is infinitely patient and kind and loving, and other times the Buddha gives you a swift kick, because that's to continue with harmful behavior to oneself and to others. Sometimes you don't even recognize. So that leading tweet was followed by lots and lots of stories about people saying that common courtesy and civility has diminished since 2016, when, for various reasons, people's lower nature was indulged. So how nice to have signs that we haven't really forgotten how to be human and kind to each other. So, where's the Buddha? The Buddha, 种种事, 种种普思想. Was that what it said? 种种诸事相, 无住, 无主, 无来处. The strange part is all the different shapes Forest of Practices says they have no host, and they don't come from anywhere. So can you wrap your head around that? It's a challenge, isn't it, to say that the Buddhas appear, they're always there, they don't go anywhere, but they appear only when we can see them, only when these conditions arise. So where do Buddhas go? Well, Buddhas, go to nirvana. And yet, the Mahayana, this description is not universal within Buddhism, but in our tradition, in Han Chuan Fojiao, they say that Buddhas are all different, and some of them say, I have already reached the end of my cultivation, but I can't sit around while living beings are suffering. I'm going to return as a bodhisattva. In fact, Manjushri, Dazhi, Wanshu Shirli Pusa, the Bodhisattva of Great Wisdom, they say he has done this process 7 times. He has become a Buddha and returned as a bodhisattva, who then cultivates again to completion, to success, and becomes a Buddha and then comes back. So the idea that somehow nirvana is the end, that's not the way this tradition describes it. Interesting, huh? So what would it mean to be the end of your cultivation? That would be, from our description of it, when you have no more ignorance covering your mind. Your mind, the virtues of your Buddha nature, which doesn't exist but is everywhere. I have to kind of say it that way. All of the darkness, all the affliction, all the attachments, all the confusion, all gone. Its nature has been revealed and is bright light. So that's Buddhahood. It's an internal process. And at that point, in our description, you can choose what you want to do. Nirvana is not the end, unless you want to. So, all right, The bodies of Buddhas are the same. They pervade throughout all worlds. They're in every shape and form, but they've got no abode. You could also translate, they have no host, they have no boss in charge. There's no core to them, and they don't come from anywhere, but they are absolutely there. Contradictory? Nope. Forest of Practices is telling us what he's seeing. If it sounds contradictory, it may be because we're bound up in it being one way or the other. Okay. Karma. 但以诸业故，说明为众生，一不离众生，而有业可得。It's all through the workings of karma that we speak of sentient beings, yet no karma can be determined without the existence of sentient beings. I'm going to do one more because you need both. 业行本空寂，众生所依之，普作众思想，亦复无来处。The nature of karma is entirely empty and still, yet sentient beings rely upon karma to appear in their many shapes and forms. Yet this too comes from nowhere. Yeah, here we go. 但以诸业故, only by means of karma, 说明为众生, do we talk about this entity called living beings and give them this name. Only because of karma do we talk about living beings existing. 亦不离众生, furthermore, not apart from living beings, 而有业可得, is there any karma that can be gotten? So, say it again. So, living beings entirely come from karma. But if you want to talk about karma, there isn't any without living beings, without sentient beings. So, us, we are sentient beings, we are living beings, and we exist because of karma. Okay, so again, just pause it, hold it in your mind, get that thought, moving on. 业性, the nature of karma itself, are fundamentally 空, empty, 寂, still. What's the nature of karma? Just like the nature of earth that he talked about prior. You can't get it. There's no karma that you can buy in the store or appears on the stock market. 众生所依之, and yet living beings totally rely upon it, even though it doesn't exist. It's empty and still. 普作众思想, everywhere creating this multitude of forms and appearances, like the Buddhas, 亦复无来处, which in the same way come from nowhere. So I'm tempted to, let's look at the English one more time. I'm tempted, every time I get to this, it's kind of like, you're going to explain this? No, but you can admire it, you can point to it, you can respect it, you can go, gee, that's suggestive. That I get all kinds of feelings about these ideas. Not to say I grasp them, I understand them, but there's just something so compelling. Okay, it's through the workings of karma that we speak of living beings, yet if you want to find karma, you have to have living beings, that karma only exists. In empty space, like the planet Mars, I guess the planet Mars has karma out there somewhere in terms of action and reaction. What is karma like? It's totally, fundamentally empty and still. No colors, no shapes, no velocity, no weight. And yet, living beings, sentient beings, come from karma. to appear in our many shapes and forms, which by themselves don't exist, come from nowhere. All right. Hanging in there? How you doing? What you can do is the next time you're at dinner at Uncle Ralph's and Aunt Susie's, and the word karma comes up, you can say, hey, I know where we can find out more. It's in that Avatamsaka Sutra. And then you'll pick it up and you'll go, yeah, that was deep. That was deep. Okay, looking at karma, share my screen. Here we go. I want to share something that happened just today. You ready? Look at karma that brings my neighbor back in the body of a python. This video was made about 4 hours ago. You're looking at a carpet python on top of the bird feeder under my roof. He can smell the birds, and he thinks he's late for lunch. He's late for the party. Where'd the birds go? I can smell them. Here he is. This is a snake probably about 8 feet long, and probably a young male or female, hard to tell, but very beautiful. And as I'm standing next to him, I have zero sense of malice or enmity or nastiness. That's not part of these snakes. They can have a bad day, they can be cranky. Notice he came down from the roof. But carpet pythons, also called scrub pythons, will coexist very happily with humans as long as we don't threaten them, give them the impression that we might eat them. If we are chill, they're happy to just move right along. There he is. And our local snake catcher, Tony Harrison, says repeatedly that 1 out of 3 houses in Queensland has a python in the roof. They're that widespread. They're nocturnal largely, but this is at at 9 a.m. that he's out running around. You can see how long. 8-foot snake, maybe longer. He made his way down, and he can smell the rodents that come out at night. There he is. So he made his way down to the ground, and then happily found a rock and settled underneath. So the idea of karma, what kind of karma brings you back in the body of a snake? No hands, no feet. Universally reviled. People, we have a core fear of snakes. I think apes, chimpanzees, and smaller monkeys are deadly afraid of snakes, with good reason. The first time I was teaching at the local university, and I had, of course, heard about snakes in Australia, but I hadn't, beyond the zoo, I hadn't seen one. And I came back from lunch, had to get my book bag and get my computer and head off to campus. And I came around the corner, and there on my deck was a full-grown carpet snake, a carpet python. And I remember propelling myself back through the air before I knew I was moving. There's something in me reacted before the thought arose, and I was jumping back. And the snake was just very cool. It's like, oh, and then he stuck out his tongue and figured out my scent profile, and okay, yeah, I know what you're about. And that was that. And he slowly made his way underneath the deck. And that was my first encounter. And since then, I've had numerous run-ins with the local carpet snakes, including the one that ate my my cockatoo. Yeah. So, what I've learned is to respect these creatures that have these very limited function bodies. They're low. You know, even our language, we say, hell yeah, lower than a snake's belly in a wagon rut. He's low. So that's, as low as you can get is a snake. And yet, here in the bush of southeastern Queensland, they are, from one respect, the apex predators, because everything here can be eaten by them, from the possums to the birds to the, I guess echidnas would be hard to swallow, but they are very much at home here. This is their perfect environment, and they belong here, and snakes have been, you think about biblical snakes, and in Buddhism, the Damangshe are called mohalochie, mahoragats, and they're described as giant pythons. They are dharma protectors for the Buddha, and they are spiritual beings who they meet the Buddha and they turn over a good leaf, and they want to protect the Dharma. So clearly there's more to snakes than meets the eye, and yet right beside carpet pythons here in Australia there are other snakes that are deadly venomous, and you don't want to have anything to do with them. So the rule is, when you see a snake, back away, quietly, not quickly, but slowly back away. Leave the snake alone. Don't grab a shovel and try to kill it, and don't go pet it or test your daring. But just back away, and the snake wants nothing to do with us, and will happily go on about its business, as it has forever. For all, since time began, humans and snakes coexist. And they are, in astrology, there's the snake nature as well as a dragon, and they're different. We hear about serpents. You knowed I was a snake before you let me in, goes the song, right? So, of all the various teachings about snakes, carpet pythons are the most, most friendly. And we have a friend here at the monastery who keeps them as pets in a terrarium and finds it very rewarding. And we have Tony and Brent Harrison here, who are at the Gold Coast and Brisbane snake catchers, and they teach everyone about all kinds of reptiles. So Master Hua's advice, he says, 蛇有灵性，你千万不要惹它, he says. Snakes have a spiritual nature. Do not mess with them. Don't give them trouble, he said. And when the monastery opened at Lantau Island in Dayushan in Hong Kong, Master Hua worked very hard to rebuild this decrepit monastery on Dayushan. And a snake came, a large snake. This is an island off the South China coast in the ocean. And The snake, Master Hua respectfully captured the snake and sent it down the mountain. And before he got back up, turned around and walked back up the mountain, the snake reappeared. The snake was there again. It beat him back, beat him to the top of the mountain again. So he said, his advice to us was, respect them, if you give them trouble, you will have trouble. So do not, just respect them. So that's my experience with carpet snakes. And so you think, and yet, what is the karma that brings you back in that kind of body? There's no doubt that carpet pythons are completely sentient. He is noticing. Their ears don't work. They don't hear, but their eyesight is good, and their smell is just better than a dog's, they say. They say that a carpet snake can smell the presence of a rodent, which is their main food, from a quarter of a mile. So 400 yards, their tongue detects the one particle of rodent smell, and they're off. That's dinner. And further, when their tongue comes out, and the sense glands they have on their, I don't know if you saw, here we go. Okay, let's get a better one. Share my screen here. Try this one here. Still too dark. Got a better one. Here. Too dark. Oh, I know. I remember where I put them. Here they are. Okay, so here we are. Not that one. Hold on, be right with you, don't go away. There we go. Okay, so all of these on the sides of the snake's snout are scent. There's the nose, but these are also ways that the snake can tell what he's encountering. And they say that they have scent libraries that are just incredibly keen, and they can tell and remember you. They know who you are in just the first instant of your encounter. They've got you figured out. So that's a prehistoric visage right there. This is a reptile, and they're actually quite beautiful if you look, if you take the time. And I know a lot of people are immediately turned off and immediately terrified, and that was me at first. But after I looked at the situation and stepped back and kind of dealt with my fear, I realized that I wasn't feeling any kind of malice or nastiness. And yet there are other snakes, particularly like eastern brown snakes, for example, that with one look you know that there is danger, that the nature of that snake is, is not unreliable, untrustworthy. It is potentially harmful. He's got it in for you. Ben told me about eastern taipan, coastal taipans that will attack a jeep. The jeep pulls up and the snakes come out of the bush and hit at it. That's not the carpet python. Anyway, so the karma of coming back in a snake's body, unless if you go for the full magical description and you say this is some powerful spiritual being temporarily in a snake's body to, cross over all the rodents or something. Well, maybe. But it can't be great karma to be in the body of a snake. Snakes are reviled. They're hated. People stomp on them, smash them, immediately, run from them. They're terrified by them. which in many cases is justified, but not always. And I think I look at my own evolution of dealing with snakes in Australia is gradually learning to respect and to see the actual the beauty of this creature, and to recognize how I am in an animal's body. If you think Homo sapien is a, animal, and they are much more attuned to life here in this Queensland rainforest than I am. They're at home here. I'm the guest. So, with that appreciation, it's like, And my favorite story about coming to Australia and learning about snakes was having in meditation class our good friend Melinda, and known lovingly as Mel, and I was complaining because some students had been in the building that I was living in, and they were very careless with the food, and they'd let the food slop over, and so mice had come in and had moved in under the sink. And I opened the drawer under the sink, and this rat poop smell came out. And so I was complaining in the meditation class, what should I do? I'm a monk. I don't want to set a trap. And Mel said, well, she said, you could always get a python, she said. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm in Australia. That's an Australian sentiment. Of course, I wouldn't do it because I wouldn't want to contribute to increasing the killing karma of the snake. But anyway, you could always get a python. We're here in Australia. So, one more verse, and we will have done half of Forest of Practices verses. Okay, what is it about karma? What is he telling us about karma? 如是诸思想，业力难思议，了达其根本，于中无所见. So it is with all forms and characteristics. The strength of karma is hard to imagine. Seeking to comprehend their foundation, you will never even catch a glimpse of it. Like this, all forms and appearances, karma strength, hard to conceive of. 了达其根本. You want to get to its foundation, to its basis, 于中无所见. There's nothing to see. In this, nothing you can see. So it is with all forms and characteristics. The strength of karma is hard to imagine. Seeking to comprehend their foundation, you will never even catch a glimpse of it. So do you quit? No. You become an architect of your own future by choosing carefully which seeds you plant and which weeds you prune, which branches you prune away. So, woman comes in to Master Hua and says, oh, Shifu, my life is so miserable. My husband just won't listen to me. I must have terrible, terrible karma, Shifu. Oh, I'm just such a bad person. I was going to kill myself, Shifu. And Master Hua goes, oh, you think you have bad karma, huh? Okay. Well, yeah. He said, bring some out and show me. And it was just the right time. And she was like, I can't, Shifu. He says, oh, well, since you know, is it real if you can't bring it out? And then she's like, so now he's got her, and she's in the pump. So at that point, he went on to explain that to blame karma for all the troubles in our lives is not taking responsibility. That's a dodge. That's an easy out. And let's say that, as Forest of Practices says, karma multi-layered and so many shapes and forms, yet there's nothing that your senses can grab. So what do you do? You step into the flow and make it work for you. Be a better person. Help people. Live in service to others. And, by golly, karma starts to work out for you. There's nothing more dramatic and clear than a national election. And America has just gone through an election season, and some very dramatic changes came about. And people for the next 6 months will be saying, this is why we got that result. Look at this was the mistake that was made that led to that result. So, yeah, because of the voting. That's why it's fascinating. You can see a little bit, they voted, people asked for this. They made the change because of decisions that were made earlier. So step into our karma. And even though there's nothing there at all, to somehow say, oh, well, since you can't see it, I'm free to do whatever I want. No, that's also an extreme. That's a mistake. So, yeah. By golly. All right, I want to share something here. Here we go. Oh, here's one. Yeah, speaking of which, check out our good karma story, good karma music from Shanghai. Carrie says, my family lives on the 5th floor of a 6-story building. There are lots of old people living there. One day, I found that the lights in the 3rd and 4th floor of the 6 stories had gone out. There were 2 lights in the public corridor, and it was dangerous for the old people to go downstairs. So I asked my parents for help and replaced them, not the parents, replaced the light bulbs. After solving the problem, I'm really glad to see these lights shining at night, useful for the elderly in case of unexpected accidents. Meanwhile, I hope these lights will illuminate the wisdom of the native inhabitants in their hearts. They will have access to the Buddha Dharma in the future. Amitabha. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Why don't I do that? There. That's the story right there. Isn't that lovely? So, that's a good deed, and we will send a choice of music to Carrie for taking the responsibility for lighting up the hallways in her apartment building so the elders wouldn't trip. Yeah, in the future, may her steps also be filled with light. There's karma right there. That's good deeds that will return because of the energy that was sent out. So, speaking of those songs that can be shared, I wanted to offer this one. This is a song about reciting the Buddha's name. Hold on. It comes from a Christian hymn that goes, how can I keep from singing? And the melody fits just beautifully. Father Cyprian Concilio, Benedictine Trappist abbot at New Camaldoli, said that he likes this line, and he says he wished he wrote this line of this song. I praise the Buddha's compassionate vows with melodies unending. My body lives in the world of woe, but my heart is world transcending. So he's one of my idols, role models in guitar and songwriting. Father Cyprian is a real composer and a liturgist. So to get his praise matters. So here's anybody who can name that tune has got a good ear. A Buddha named Eternal Light vows to save creation, made a land where suffering's gone, place of liberation. So use his vows and be reborn, lotus flowers delighting. Simply keep his name in mind, never stop reciting. Sahaland is a place of pain, struggle and contention. Find a world of utmost bliss, first set your intention. Those men or women which you're poor, rebirth not delighting, apply themselves with a single mind, never stop reciting. The Buddha's compassionate vows, melodies unending. My body lives in the world of woe, my heart is world transcending. With bodhisattvas joyfully, soon be reuniting. Till I reach Amitabha's land, I'll never stop reciting. Till I reach Amitabha's land, never stop reciting. Namo Amitabha. Never stop reciting. A critic might say, tune your banjo, man. Oh, we'll keep that. Let's see here. That's coming up next. Okay. Well, by golly. To say that we looked at karma and we looked at pythons and we talked about snakes and we listened to the first half of Bodhisattva practice forest of practices. We will pick up again at that point, 3 weeks from now, okay, let's see, yes, hoping. So I'm off to meet some dear Dharma friends in Singapore for a week plus, and we'll be giving talks at the Buddhist Union, Fojiao Hui, and that's a place where folks educated in the English stream who are Buddhists but are not Chinese-speaking Buddhists, where they gather. And we've been friends for years and years, decades now. And then I'll split the time with the Buddhist Layman's Lodge, the Fojiao Jishilin, where Chinese-speaking Buddhists gather. And the two kinds of practices, interestingly, based on the two cultures, are different. And the Buddhist lodge, the Jishilin, the Layman's Lodge, they emphasize Pure Land practice, and their chief teacher, Master Yan Xu, is an annual visitor here to the Gold Coast Dharma realm. We have a very healthy Dharma sharing relationship, so I'll be spending part of my time there. And then traveling back to the US, leaving Australia for a few short months before returning. So if I see you in Singapore, we'll say hello, and if not, I'll see you in California, and then I'll be back here in the Gold Coast. So Jin Chuan and Jin Wei Shi, I see, have joined us, and they put together a video recently that tells an amazing story about a monastery where I will be spending time called Redwood Vihara, Hong Mu Chan Lin, down in the Santa Cruz Redwoods, Northern California. And people know the fires came through just not long ago, and we had a miraculous experience with fire at our monastery. So Jin Chuan or Jin Wei, do you want to share the screen?
Yeah, can do. We can do it for sure.
Narrate, tell the story.
Okay. So it sounds okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we will share the video. Okay, please let us know if this works. Okay, we're sharing screen.
Yep.
So this is somebody driving through the fires.
Exactly in the place where we are right now, Santa Cruz Mountains, during the fire.
Pretty amazing.
That's Highway 9, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the road in and out. August 21st, 2020.
So this our neighbor came to our property. We just pause it for a second, give people a sense. So you can see the fire in the distance. Our neighbor came back to see his house after 2 or 3 days after the evacuation orders. And he saw his house and cried. His house was still standing. Grabbed some things to try to create a little protective defense barrier around his house. And as he was leaving, he thought, I should take a look at the Buddhist place. So he's about half a mile down the road. So he came in and he looked at our property and he saw, wow, fires all around. Right? He took these pictures. These are live pictures he took when he visited. And he started going, oh, I need to find some firemen. So he drove out, and right where he got to the highway 9, it just so happened a fire truck showed up from Mountain View. And so he flagged them down, and they said, there's a fire, we need help. And they said, yeah, we're just looking for the fire. Where is it?
Go Norwich Road. Where's Norwich Road? We don't have in the map. You don't have in the map. You draw on the map how to get to our place, and they find out their fire engine was too heavy to cross our bridge. So then take one by one and drove those firefighters to the both places we call Karuna House and Prajna House. This is the Prajna House. and it was life-saving for our places, although you can see later what's happened.
So fire's burning around, right? Look at that coming in.
There's the fire right there.
Yeah, right. This is our back area.
Coming down the hill.
From that hill, 20 feet away. Look at that. He said that he came here maybe 30 minutes or an hour later, just burned.
And what has the most scary thing, what he experienced, was the explosions of the propane tanks.
Propane tanks exploding in the fire, in the heat. Yeah.
They shoot it into the air.
There, you'll see one right there.
Right
That's
there.
our propane tank.
Right.
And you can imagine it goes shooting into the, very, very high, and explode. And usually when you hear the sound of the explosion, you know that the house was disappeared.
Yeah, definitely the house is gone. We actually called the feral gas who does the propane tanks, because the fires were coming. So should we try to remove the tanks? And they said no, the tanks are actually quite resistant to flame and fire. So if they explode, your house is gone for sure.
Yeah.
So meaning that the house is burning, and then the propane tank basically explodes, and it shoots out propane from the bottom, and it flies up into the air, hundreds of feet.
Hundreds of feet. And from time to time, he heard like boom, something in the area explode. It was very traumatic. And honestly, in the neighborhood, there's still their memory, and the trauma is there, because it was more than 1,500 structures was completely burned in the area.
Yeah. Okay, and this actually burned. So we had a carport here and a tool shed here, and completely burned. And just right across from our house, about 50 feet, just across the driveway. And so he showed up, and that was smoldering just like this. Right, look at that. His pictures, on site, fires are coming. He snapped a couple pictures.
And see also the smoke.
Yeah, you can see the smoke's coming. Okay, so the fire is put out, and the Boulder Creek and the neighboring area, basically are grateful for their heroes.
And it's amazing, like almost every corner, in different shops, in the small cities close by, Boulder Creek, Bon Lemon, Felton, you can see the signs. People naturally from the heart want to thanks to their heroes. They saved their properties and their lives.
SLV is San Lorenzo Valley. That's the road.
Yeah.
Boulder Creek Fire Department. Thank you.
FD, yeah.
SMC.
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz Mountains strong.
Santa Cruz Mountains strong.
Yeah.
It's kind of
1,500 structures burned. Wow.
And you can see those redwoods in the back.
Yeah.
They're tough. The redwoods survive. They're tall, and their bark is resistant to fire.
Thank you, heroes. Forever grateful.
SLV strong.
San Lorenzo Valley strong.
Yeah. So this is after the fires. We have an intrepid group of our volunteers show up to clean up after the fire damage.
Our first responders.
You'll see there who's standing right there in the center, on the left, Goji.
That's Goji.
Leading the team.
And the right side is Victor. And here is, I think, Tom.
Yeah. You're cleaning up the rubble from the tool shed.
And of course was Dan with us,
Our
the neighbor.
A lot of people.
This is our neighbor.
That's our neighbor.
Saved our house with his son.
Yeah.
Aaron.
That's our water tank. So we have a 5,000 gallon water tank, and
water tank.
Now it's a pancake.
It just became a pancake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 of them, actually.
Yeah, 2 of them. You do see the ash all around, but the forest is still so beautiful.
Very short shortly described what happened here. House okay, garage gone.
The whole story in 4 words.
4 words.
House okay, garage gone.
Same like truck.
Well, fortunately, the truck was parked not in the parking structure, but across next to the house, so it didn't burn. And you'll see Jing Wei will walk around the house, and you'll see where the fire got to.
You see the ashes.
Yeah, see the ash there? Right?
You can see how close fire was. See the line.
See the line. Oh, we should share it. So that line there is actually interesting. So we showed to the nuns, what happened to the fire, and their first response was, "Oh, we didn't recite the Great Compassion mantra around the tool shed." Because when we bought this property, the monks, the nuns, we went there and purified the boundaries and recited around the house, but we didn't think about reciting around the parking structure and the tool shed. And it's interesting, just where the fire kind of stopped is where we walked.
That's the line of where the monks and nuns recited the mantra, and where we didn't recite.
Actually, yeah,
Yeah.
completely gone. Yeah, there you go.
The line.
Do that, right? Of course, also probably the firefighters made a line of protection around the house. So
Who appear suddenly out of nowhere on
Yeah.
the highway now when our the neighbor desperately tried to find them.
so human and also spiritual support.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we are here in the second house.
Karuna house. Right here.
Or in the first house.
Fires all around. Everybody wearing masks. The reason because is
You can
it's
breathe.
so smoky, you can't really breathe.
Yeah.
You still smell all the ash.
On the right, you see
Yeah,
chainsaw.
Yeah, your chainsaw there on the right. The team.
Dharma Joy.
Definitely community. Working with good friends. Dedication and merit. So every time we finish the work, dedicate merit.
And very often before we start the work, as was today, we walk around the line, we recite the Great Compassion mantra around the house.
Or Guanyin
Great
Bodhisattva's
Bodhisattva's
name.
name.
Bodhisattva's name. So yeah, so that's our slideshow.
Great, thank you for that. It's interesting discussion of karma. Yeah. Okay, here's the website, and the Amitabha session is over.
Yeah.
The film screening is over. The Ancient Wisdom in Modern Life series is over. The Great Compassion Mantra dedication is coming up, right?
Yeah. End of November.
Okay. Then reopening. I've had a couple questions from people saying, when are DRBA monasteries opening? And here at Gold Coast Dhamma Realm, we had a concert last night. Had, 35 people, 40 people? That's the biggest gathering since COVID came. So what's going on at Berkeley in terms of participation?
we have our Thursday and Friday meditations open, and you have maybe 4 or 5 people show up each day for the sits.
Okay.
And we sometimes have visitors come through. We're definitely looking into how to open up, like for instance starting Tai Chi and talking to our regular teachers like James Baraz and others about how they can start up their classes again, because I think definitely people are hungry for in-person events.
Okay, all right. Appreciate that. So the two of you, do you know what you'll be lecturing on next week and the following week?
Not yet,
Not yet.
but we will announce it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Maybe we can email Jerry.
All right. I will be away in Singapore, and then I'll be back in California. So see you soon.
Okay. Amitofo.
Beautiful. All right. So let's dedicate merit now and appreciate everybody's hard work in keeping this series going week after week. We need to send out our best wishes to the world, for the world, and use this mantra as our vehicle. So please do make that wish. Here we go. We can bow to the Buddhas now. You're welcome to join me if you care to. Okay, here we go. To the first bow. And the second bow. And the third bow. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Alrighty, that will do it for us for today. Cliff, you going to translate with the other monks the next 2 weeks? Good. All right. We'll see you all in a couple weeks. Amitofo. Bye-bye now.